Hey, so I'm here with my colleague Devin, and today we want to walk you guys through all the work that's gone into our new line item editor and really where it's at now and how you guys can start to take advantage of it. So take it away, Devin. Who are you on the team and what was your role in this project and where did we get started?
Hey Ash, yeah, thanks for inviting me on the video. Yeah, a bit about myself. I've been with Coder just a little over 2 years now. I'm a senior software developer, focusing mostly on the front end. And yeah, my role over the last like roughly a year or so has been uh, really fine-tuning our quote editor, uh, making it more intuitive, easier to use, definitely focusing on just overall usability and making it more um, intuitive to
Yeah.
use. Yeah,
Yeah, that's very true. So, a bit of history for people who haven't maybe been with us at Quoter for the last few years, but we built out a number of features to improve quoting flexibility and bringing functionality that your end customers need. Things like single select sections and line item groups, things where you want to speed up that conversation really you're having through a quote with that prospect or customer and making it easier for them to say, yeah, this is what I need, or this is what I don't need for optional items, and ensuring they make a selection when there must be a selection made. And so a bit of the background here is we added a lot of features and functionality and we got them into the quote editor, but in a bit of a way that was maybe too structured. Would you agree with that, Devin?
yeah, definitely. It was a little structured and just a little restrictive in what you could do with certain parts of the quote itself.
Right. And how do we address that?
Yeah, so I guess part one was kind of refactoring some of the drag and drop for the quote editor. Before there was a lot of restrictions on what you could drag, where in a specific part of the quote. Um, and yeah, just completely, taking a fresh look at that side of it, um, gave us some ideas on where to go with everything. And we eventually uh, settled on something called quote elements. And that basically was just a new way for us to define different elements that we could move around on a quote. I think a good example of that was before. Um, you had sections and then you had section groups, and the section groups were always separate from everything else. And it didn't really, feel very intuitive to always have these section groups completely, on their own when it does make sense to have them, with sections together. So part of, the quote elements was just being able to have both of those together, uh, so that you can drag and drop so that you can always have them in any order that you wanted. I think before we also had a concept of an implicit section. So it was that section up at the top of the quote um, that just had line items, but essentially it was a section. So then after the quote elements piece, we moved on to converting that uh, implicit section at the top so that it just becomes part of a section and just becomes something that you can move around anywhere in a quote instead of always being locked up at the top there. So I think that was the first few main pieces that we introduced to, just make the quote way more flexible in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that really was a big part of this project is the iterative development we made. I can't take us back in time to the very beginning. I wish I could because you'd see some very fundamental differences. But you're right, there used to be sort of a loose area of line items at the top. And we built out a whole migration path where as people took advantage of the new functionality to have a deliberate section wrapping all of their line items, they found that we would be moving those line items into a section when they created a quote from a template that had that list of loose line items in what we used to call the implicit section. And just to highlight what you were talking about there, so now you've got this section group, and I can actually drag this all the way down to the bottom here underneath this section. And now that allows complete flexibility of rearranging those elements on the page, which is something we didn't have, even probably 6 months ago. So that was a big piece that we added. And just to also speak to the ability to move the sections now, you can see I've got this section now. It's in a section group. That would mean that the end customer would need to choose from these managed services, package A or package B. But I can, if I decide, I can drag that right outside of the group now, and it becomes a regular section. And obviously I can drag it back in too. So exactly as you were describing, just a lot more flexibility here around how you can interact with everything at the section level. And then even down to the other elements on the quote. You've got bundles that you can move in between sections here and drag obviously back into the other section. And aesthetically too, the actual UI we have in place now for drag and drop is a lot easier to use. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot quicker to just drag and drop things around and, kind of get a good idea of, what's going to happen before you drop.
Yeah, I think that was a huge improvement and something we rolled out a few months ago too. Now, taking this to the present, what we also want to talk about here is really the new line item editor. So what I've been showing here is the older UI, which still has all of the functionality that we've been talking about, all the improvements to drag and drop, the flexibility on having your section groups above sections, below sections, wherever you want them. And also it's important to reiterate how this helps the end customer too, because a part of what we're trying to help MSPs do is present really nice looking quotes to their end customer, to their prospect or the client that they're working with. And that will help close that gap between quote to cash. We wanted them to be able to present the information in whatever layout they want that meets the needs of that specific quote. So with all that said, I think I'd like to turn on this new checkbox here and show people what the new editor looks like. Can you walk us through some of the improvements that we're seeing here?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a pretty big transformation and also supporting both at the same time, like the old UI and the new UI. That was a bit of a challenge, but we found a way to make it work. And yeah, just a lot of it is just trying to simplify the different sections of the quote, make it easier to like visually at a glance understand everything on the quote. Uh, yeah, just a lot of, small but meaningful improvements overall just for the whole UI, just sort of add up to this, big change that just, it looks better and it feels a lot easier to use.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And just to highlight a few things that we've done to make usability uh, a step forward here, or really to improve usability, I should say. It used to be a little tricky to see the state of your bundles. And so one thing we've done is we've added this nice icon here that actually identifies the state based on the coloring. And so previously you'd have to go into the menu, which we've moved from the right-hand side over here to make it a little bit more accessible. You'd have to go in and pick the radio button you want, whether you want your end customer to see just the bundle or just the line items or both. You can actually just click on this icon and it cycles through those different states here. So bringing better visibility to the current state as well as a usability improvement on how to toggle those changes. I think another thing worth highlighting is previously there were different ways you could take advantage of the different objects on the quote, which would result in different indentation of different elements. And on occasion, the header would become not lined up with all of the different columns on the quote. So one thing we've done here with the sticky header, which is partially hidden by this development mode, we are in the staging environment here, even though this is set to be released to production next week. You can see that we are always lining up the header with the correct data, independent of if you're looking at a regular line item or a line item that's inside a bundle, or really no matter what your configuration is, we're making sure that you can accurately identify the field based on the column header there. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight from the work that you did in this area?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Like definitely the sticky header is a big improvement. That was one thing that I'd always found difficult with the old UI was just how just the columns wouldn't really exactly line up. So it wouldn't give you a clear idea of what fields you were always editing, but now it just feels a lot cleaner and easier to understand, exactly which columns, go where.
Yeah, I think that was a big improvement. Just aesthetically too, we've tried to group things using nice colors and try and better use the real estate as well. You might notice if I switch back to the old editor here, just the amount of space we were using up um, as far as the vertical space available in the screen. And now we've sort of condensed a lot of these line items into a little bit more of a grid look. And that just allows you to see more of what's going on in that quote and more easily make the edits that you want to make without scrolling around too much. Another thing to note is if you're an MSP that's using Quoter to have item options for each of your different line items or some of your line items, on occasion you have line item specific SKUs or details like color or things like that can also increase or decrease the price, but they show up under the line item here. And in the old UI, it was a very spaced out radio button or checkbox interface. If you are using any of that functionality or even the custom fields at the line item level, take a look at this new line item editor and see the difference. You'll notice way better use of real estate, a much cleaner interface, and easier to navigate as well. Okay, so before we wrap up, there actually is one other detail that we wanted to highlight here around the line item groups. Do you want to walk us through that, Devin?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, previously for our line item groups or single select line item groups, they used to be called, they would always be separate under this, like the section totals there, but now we've worked on a feature to bring those up together with the line items in the section. So now you can drag and drop a line item group, in and around any line items. You can have it at the top of your quote, bottom, in the middle of your line items in a section. So yeah, just further increasing that flexibility and sort of bringing the concept that we had for the quote elements into sections as well.
Yeah, you can also have bundles inside your line item group. So a line item group is where your end customer must select one of the options within that group of line items. We also touched on section groups or really single select section groups as well, where the end customer must select one of those sections, so all the line items within that section. So there's so much flexibility here around how you can configure this quote to make it easy for your end customer to know what they can select, can't select, and making sure that you really just put those guardrails in place and make it easy to communicate what you need them to sign off on for your managed services and your add-ons. And yeah, as you highlighted there, you can move around the bundles within the line item group. You can even move around the line item group itself to be within this section group. You can move it entirely out of the section group into your optional add-ons group up here. And really you can sort of do whatever you need to do. And that was a big part of this project, right? It was taking a very restrictive environment that was becoming difficult to use and really focusing on usability and making it so that our line item editor is something people enjoy using while still having all the functionality that we made available through Quoter over the last few years. Any last words to sum up the work? Was this a fun project for you?
Yeah, it was tons of fun. Just, picking something, that was, a good problem. Like, it's not the easiest to use. How do we, unlock this, power for our partners in general?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it was so much fun working with you on this, and the end result is certainly going to be appreciated by our community of MSPs that use this every single day. I'm sure we'll be saving people a lot of time, and I think they're going to love the new interface. Thanks, Devin.
Looking forward to getting good feedback on this too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great so far for the few that are in the closed beta, and now it's going to be awesome to open this up to everyone else. All right, well, thanks so much, and on to the next project.